Welcome into Pro Football Today, the post-game show with Kasey Hudson and Tom Vecchio, and we have a wrap on Thursday Night Football. Niners versus Seahawks. Niners run away with the win, 36-24, and Tom and I talked about this during halftime. Things did heat up for the Seahawks in that second half. As expected, we saw them do that versus a good Lions team. We kind of anticipated the rally in the second half versus this Niners team, and I think we've got some pretty decent things to break down, Tom, but most importantly, an unfortunate situation when it comes to Mason trying to work through. I believe it was his shoulder, because that's what I saw him doing on the sideline, yes, kind of trying to oil it up in the joints there. But initial thoughts on that second half before we cut to break.
You know, this has kind of been the script for the Seahawks, at least in the games that we've done and games that they've played good teams when, you know, they kind of fall behind. We were questioning how good they were going into that game versus the Lions. They really hadn't played anyone. You know, Gino goes over his passing yards, you know, kind of what I mentioned at halftime. They were going to be in this big passing script. Injury on the side for the 49ers, which were Mason. They get there. Debo had a good game. George Kittle had a good game. Lockett ended up having a good game. Like, the 49ers, they were able to right the ship in this game. And then the Seahawks, it's like, we weren't knowing. We didn't know what they were like over the past few weeks because they didn't play good teams. They had a good record. I think they came crashing back down to earth. They're going to put up points because their defense is so bad. But, you know, it's a tough road ahead for them, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a good lookout call for you during halftime to mention, you know, Gino still has an ability here to hit some passing props and get those numbers, and he was able to do just that. I mean, closes out the night with another 300-plus performance, 312 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 2 costly interceptions, as always. But most importantly, another 14-point third-quarter performance for the Seattle Seahawks. So like I mentioned, plenty to get into to kind of unpack all 4 quarters of this football game, 36-24 being the final score there. Don't go anywhere, though. Tom and I are going to continue to roll through this game, and then, of course, as y'all know, we preview what's coming up on the Sunday slate ahead. So continue your football coverage with Tom Vecchio and myself here on SportsGrid TV on the other side of this break.
He already has more than 1,000 yards. The last 3 running backs to win the Heisman, Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, Reggie Bush, did not have more than 650 in their opening 5 games of the year. Ashton Genty on pace to strike the pose in December.
Statistics matter. Blow every record out of the water, and he will be a Heisman. Disgraceful performance by the head coach, not Gene.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
I do a sliding DiVincenzo to the 1. Obviously, Terrence Shannon Jr., that is actually dynamic offensively and defensively. So we'll see how it works. I think it's a little bit of a work in progress. Do both teams win? Yes. I don't think at the end of the day, Minnesota could have afforded to keep Cat, Rudy, and Ant for that amount of money.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I do think they come back, and I think they win this game, but they've got to do it decisively. I think they've got to get that confidence back because they went out there, and like I said earlier, Kentucky almost beat Georgia. Kentucky almost did beat Ole Miss, and I think what you're going to see in this conference, if you don't play well and you're a top 10 team in the SEC, you're going to get knocked out by one of those top 25 teams in the SEC if you're not ready to play.
Powered by SportsGrid.
Back at it with Pro Football Today, the post-game show with Kasey Hudson and Tom Vecchio here on SportsGrid TV, breaking down this Thursday night football matchup, which ended up being a little bit of a shootout if you look at the numbers. Purdy closing the night with 255 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Geno Smith with another 300-plus performance, 312 to be exact, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. I'm just happy that he hit my passing attempts over. It was looking a little grim there for a minute, but when we chatted at halftime, and SportsGrid fans, I hope you're joining Tom and I here on SportsGrid at halftime. We discussed the fact that you should continue to gauge Geno Smith's props when it comes to passing, to not count out the Seahawks because they tend to be a second-half rally team, and that's exactly what we saw as they put up another 14-point performance in the third quarter. Geno Smith just entertaining when it comes to these passing props, but when you're looking at the Seahawks offense specifically, Tom, what are ways that you will gauge this team prop-wise moving forward as they just kind of show us what their identity is kind of going to be until they get fully healthy?
You know, one note I want to kind of circle back to from the pregame show was when Dave was, said that he reviewed a lot of the receiving props and said a lot of these players were at 4.5 across the board, and that's what we saw. And, we're seeing Geno up at 300 yards, 312 to be exact, as you said. We're seeing 4 of 65, 6 of 63, 5 of 53, 3 of 48, 8 of 37. This is for Lockett, Fant, Smith and Jigba, Metcalf, and Walker. We're seeing so many different players involved. So I say a lot of these players have decent, I would say, prop availability on a week-to-week basis just because they're going to be passing the ball at a high rate because their defense is so bad they're constantly falling behind. Now, it can make it difficult to nail down that one player where DK did not go over his receiving prop, but he did have 11 targets today, which is absolutely unbelievable. So I'd be buying back in a DK next week just because some of that variance is going to shift the other direction. He did catch that long touchdown at the end of the fourth quarter, which was called back by a penalty. So if that doesn't happen, he goes way over, he cashes his touchdown prop, et cetera, et cetera. So the point being, Seattle actually has a lot of viable options. We may not view them as like a good real-life football team, but from a betting perspective, if Geno's going to be throwing the ball 40 times a game because they're constantly playing from behind, Lockett, Fant, Smith and Jigba, DK, all of them have the potential to go over on their props. So that's a big takeaway from Seattle. On the other side, Debo, credit to Adam, went over 100 yards. He could have gotten to the 125, just couldn't call in. He was involved in the running game. And the news really comes down to what happens with Jordan Mason. Is he healthy for next week? Will he be ready to go?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was so close for Adam to get that right there, but I think that was just kind of one of the other scripts of the night is all of us being very, very close to some tremendous plays. I know that I felt the pain when it came to Kenneth Walker coming up just 5 yards short of that 25 rushing yards in the first half there. But one thing that we've talked about on Pro Football Today, the pregame show specifically, is kind of looking, engaging at the correct running backs to probably have those combined rush and receiving yards. I probably would have liked Kenneth Walker's number to be drawn back just a tad. 89.5 I knew felt a little high, but typically if they were able to get things going a little better in that first half there, it's something that he could have landed, but a number of other guys were able to kind of pick up there. And if you didn't ult it like Adam mentioned, then Deebo Samuel was a viable option in terms of having combined receiving and rushing yards, and a guy to probably continue to gauge moving forward, especially if Mason's not in the mix, as you mentioned there, Tom. Is there any other big takeaways that you had from this matchup moving forward?
I mean, Isaac Orendo might be the guy in San Francisco in the backfield. It's going to be between him and Pat Taylor. This is only if Jordan Mason is out. They do have this mini bye since they're playing on a Thursday. It's a wait and see. The McCaffrey news is that he could come back in the beginning of November. It's a mess for San Francisco in their backfield, but they do have some time off to kind of sort things out.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully we're looking at a 49ers team that could start putting all of their pieces together and be a bigger play team down the stretch here, because letting a team come back in the second half, that doesn't say anything great about your defense, especially when you're one of the best. Exactly. Especially when you're supposed to be one of the most intimidating defenses in the NFL. So a lot of things to kind of gauge here moving forward. But speaking of moving forward, we do have a big slate coming up on Sunday as usual. And look, I hate to do this to you, but we probably should start with that 9:30 game, right? Jaguars versus the Bears. Caleb Williams is a talk that you and I have had a number of times, a guy who's able to weather behind a fractured offensive line, yet a Jaguars team that's kind of feeling themselves after finally getting a win. I'm not reading too much into it, but how are you reading this matchup?
Jaguars in there, home away from home in London. I got to say, I kind of like Caleb Williams in this game, over 240.5 passing yards. We spoke heavily about Caleb Williams. Beginning of the year, he didn't look good. I said, one quarter, one game doesn't define a player, and he slowly got better. They're slowly putting him in good spots. And, man, the Jaguars' defense is bad, right? We had talked about them being a bad team. And then last week, Joe Flacco comes in and goes for over 300 yards, picks them apart. This is a chance for Williams to kind of continue to build on some of the success he's had over the past few weeks. Last week against the Panthers, DJ Moore gets involved, actually going up against his former team. I think this is another spot for Caleb Williams to continue to grow, to continue to show that he's worthy of that first overall pick, and him to put up some points, put up some yards. So I'm buying into Caleb Williams. It was a slow start, but they kind of got things moving right now.
Yeah, I like that too, and I'm right there on the buy, and I think that they've tried to make the better adjustments that they possibly can with what they have on their roster, them being the Bears there. But where would you kind of go with DeAndre Swift? He's been a key factor, obviously, to the Bears having success. He's sitting at 52.5 rushing yards, and we know that they're going against a really bad Jaguars defense. So this is something that feels like a lock to lean towards, but what are you feeling?
Yeah, 52.5 seems on the nose. Roschon Johnson's at 25.5. DeAndre Swift combined is 75.5 rushing plus receiving. I certainly don't mind that. We have seen who was it? It was Trey Sermon last week for Indy. I could buy into 75.5. If you just want to play just the 52, just the rushing, I think that's fine. I would have to dig into some of the numbers more, but a part of me wants to take DeAndre Swift 70 plus just rushing. I think they really can control this game.
Yeah, and there goes the theme again, where you can find the combination and probably give yourself a safe edge on where the numbers will line up to get to that proper total. We talked about this a little bit the last time you and I hung out for the post-game show. Found it to be probably one of the better games of the weekend, Commanders versus the Ravens. Now we've got some other numbers that are out in the mix, so what are things that are popping out to you when it comes to this matchup?
I really like the Commanders 6.5. Really like them. They are playing awesome, and you look at just some of their overall just team level stats where they're just converting so much on third down. They're sustaining drives. They're picking up points. They actually started the year super high with points on 14, 15 straight drives, whatever it is. Daniels looks great. The 6.5 I think is an awesome number, and frankly, I think this is giving far too much respect for the Ravens. And I know the Ravens are good, and we said, let's not panic about the Ravens after their, slow start to the season, 0-2. They were going to be good. They just won an overtime game barely against the Cincinnati team that doesn't have everything together. 6.5 feels like way, way too much. Again, and maybe it's just me, but we can buy into the trends, which admittedly, I'm not very big on. It's like, all these underdogs of X points are covering and they're winning outright. So I like the over 51.5, which is not something I would normally say for a number that high. And I love the Commanders this week at plus 6.5. I think it's another game for Daniels to continue to do his thing. You want to look to Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry on the side. I think that's totally fine. The pass catching options for the Ravens, I have a tough time getting behind. I think Zay Flowers is a tremendous talent. He just doesn't see the ball enough for me to trust him on a prop basis week to week.
Yeah, it seems like they kind of lean on him later on in games or just kind of in weird play motions, and then all of a sudden that much yardage is coming in for Zay Flowers, even though he can be more of a catalyst for that team. Interesting thing about Ravens and their play calling. Something else that I kind of like, though, not to speak against his yardage, but Jaden Daniels, if sitting at that over under 21.5 completions, he kind of just barely gets over this number. Going against this Ravens team, I'm a little nervous, but it's something I would almost lean towards because of his passing script. But you and I can get into that further on the other side of this quick break. A big game that we're both looking forward to. I just want to see Daniels continue to go off, and I find it so entertaining that this has been Lisi's guy since the beginning, and he at least has bragging rights on that forever and ever here at SportsGrid. So it's panning out for him. Don't go anywhere. More with Tom and myself here on Pro Football Today. It's the post-game show on SportsGrid TV.
He already has more than 1,000 yards. The last 3 running backs to win the Heisman, Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, Reggie Bush, did not have more than 650 in their opening 5 games of the year. Ashton Genty on pace to strike the pose in December.
Statistics matter. Blow every record out of the water, and he will be a Heisman. Disgraceful performance by the head coach, not Gene.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. Brady, I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all season long. What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
I do a sliding DiVincenzo to the what? Obviously, Terrence Shannon Jr., that is actually dynamic offensively and defensively. So we'll see how it works. I think it's a little bit of a work in progress. Do both teams win? Yes. I don't think at the end of the day, Minnesota could have afforded to keep Cat, Rudy, and Ant with that amount of money.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I do think they come back, and I think they win this game, but they've got to do it decisively. I think they've got to get that confidence back because they went out there, and like I said earlier, Kentucky almost beat Georgia. Kentucky almost did beat Ole Miss, and I think what you're going to see in this conference, if you don't play well and you're a top 10 team in the SEC, you're going to get knocked out by one of those top 25 teams in the SEC if you're not ready to play.
Powered by SportsGrid.
Back at it with Pro Football Today. It's the post-game show with Kasey Hudson and Tom Vecchio here on SportsGrid TV. And in case you missed it, Niners get the victory, 36-24, regardless of the second half rally that most of us expected out of the Seahawks, but it doesn't matter. Thursday night is behind us, and as the athletes like to say, it's time to turn the page and move forward. Tom and I were talking right before the break about the Commanders taking on the Ravens, and I was basically making the case to say, you've got Jaden Daniels sitting at a completion or over-under of 21.5. Well, he's hit this, not well, but the lowest he's had is 23. And this sitting at 21.5 is something that seems flattering to me, regardless of them going against the Ravens, because the air attack is his key skill set that he has been able to do. He has a number of weapons to find, and they have just been so good at, as you put it, Tom, kind of slicing and dicing teams, almost like Swiss cheese out there. So something I'll be gauging. Is there anything else that you're probably looking at with this matchup before we move on to any more of the Sunday slate?
I'm not sure as of now. You know, Daniels, all these stats about him, how he's being so efficient, his completion percentage is through the roof, he's setting records, this, that, rookie through 5 weeks. All these things are amazing. He spreads the ball around a lot, which is a bit of an issue when it comes to nailing down one specific receiver. Terry McLaurin is their best offensive player I would look to, but it's sometimes we just trust just the quarterback because they spread it around. There's no one player we can look to. Over on completions is probably the best way to go.
I love that. That's actually a big thing to point out. Kind of what we were just talking about with the Seahawks and receptions and stuff like that. Sometimes that's a great way to put it. Just trust the quarterback and lean into that and go as you go. Or look at live props throughout the game because you'll get a better idea of how things are potentially going to move about. I have not seen updated injury reports in terms of the New Orleans Saints, but we got the Tampa Bay Bucks taking on the Saints, another in-division battle here. When it comes to comparing healthy rosters, unfortunately, it seems like both teams are equally as banged up. You have a number of guys defensively that were banged up for the Bucks, and then obviously some pieces falling apart for the offense for the Saints. 3.5 spread, 41.5 total. What do we see in this matchup?
Well, Spencer Rattler has been named the starting quarterback for the Saints. They're going to be without Derek Carr for a couple of weeks. I got to say, under 41.5 has to be the play. The Saints, their offense was struggling in that game against the Chiefs when Carr was in there. we've kind of said, oh, did something happen with the Saints? They got off to a super hot start. The script has kind of flipped on them in recent weeks. With Rattler at the helm, I do not have confidence in them scoring. I'm looking to the under in this game, the under on the Saints on their team total. And, what do we talk about with your Bucks? Got to phrase it like that. They're coming off a loss, which, it wasn't a good end of the game for them, right? So they've had this extra time since it was last Thursday to kind of get things under control, get a little bit healthier. It is a divisional game, which they would like to pick up after losing the last one. Kind of got to lock in on this game and win it against what is a third-string quarterback. You got to remember, Rattler did not come into the game when Derek Carr got hurt. So this is a third-string rookie quarterback making his first ever start against a divisional opponent. It's got to be the Bucs in this one. They got to come away with a clean win.
Absolutely clean and cut win. I mean, to have the bad taste in their mouth after falling short to the Falcons, to have that game in hand and feel that kind of loss, this needs to be an epic punch in the mouth to the Saints. No offense to them and the injuries that they have rattled off. Still pretty strong defense, so I do agree with you. I like the under on this one because with the Bucs being in full control, or as much control as I'm anticipating and hoping they will be in, you're looking at an inability to score for the Saints for the most part, and even if the Bucs ramp it up, shouldn't be touching close to a 41.5 total. We'll see how things veer off there. Obviously, Bucs got to New Orleans early because of the hurricane. Hopefully, everyone who has family in Florida, your family is safe after what just took place down in Florida last night. But that gave them some extra time and legs on the ground to not be flying so closely either. Something else that can help pan out for them. No props up quite yet, so we will move along here. I don't know whether to call this entertaining or what. Eagles versus the Browns. You and I did talk about the Eagles potentially getting some pieces back to go against this Browns team. So could this be more of a dominant performance for the Eagles versus the Browns on Sunday?
Yeah, this number opened at 8.5 and it's sitting at 9.5. And, that's due in part to A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. They are both spotted at practice. They are both full in practice, which is good to see if you're an Eagles backer or some type of future on them, whatever it might be. The Browns are terrible. The Browns are a really, really bad team. And, we're at the point where the quarterback change is obviously something a lot of people are talking about. Will they bring in Jameis? There's so much money tied up with Deshaun Watson. Here's what it comes down to for this game. I think the Eagles win. They're back at home. They got their offense moving back on full swing. I would like to see an update if Lane Johnson, one of their offensive linemen, if he will play. Haven't seen that yet. But A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith will be back. Do I want to lay 9.5 points? No, that's just not a number that I'm comfortable laying. It doesn't matter how good the team is, how bad the team, early in the season, late in the season. It's just not something I do. I think the Eagles win. I'm looking to Deshaun Watson unders. I'm looking to team total unders on the Browns, and that's essentially saying the same thing where I think the Eagles win this game by 10 points, but I'd rather see them go out and put up 30 points and take a Browns under rather than lay the 9.5. That's just the way I like to go about it. If someone wants to go out there and lay the 9.5, by all means do it.
Yeah, I'm steering clear of the spread on this one, too, because realistically, with the Eagles getting a little bit more healthy and with the destruction that has been the Browns, you want this spread to go absolutely crazy in favor of the Eagles putting up points and moving along. They should be able to have a quality performance versus a Browns team that really just has to figure out a lot of things. We do have another quick break coming up here, but talking about a spread that you may or may not want to touch. Colts, big injuries over the weekend. Titans, we don't even really know what's going on there. 2.5 spread, 42.5 total. I mean, where do we steer on this one?
I kind of like the Colts. Will Levis should be starting for the Titans. Joe Flacco was good last week for the Colts. That's just a fact. So give me Joe Flacco with the points. Michael Pittman apparently is out for multiple weeks and maybe going on IR. Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, those are players we'll be looking to. We do need an update on Anthony Richardson if he's officially out. We do need an update on Jonathan Taylor if he's officially out. There would be another Trey Sermon week in the backfield for them. So I like the Colts. I like Joe Flacco if he starts. Give me some yards. Give me some touchdowns. Josh Downs, Alec Pierce. Pretty easy way to go about it.
Very true, especially because you can probably rely on Flacco more than any other name that was in the mix there. And we saw him have to encourage and elevate younger wide receiving group last year when he stepped in the helm. So it's so wild to see one of the top quarterbacks from years ago be that guy that has to step in and help teams out. But don't go anywhere. Tom and I got one more rally here on Pro Football today. It's the post-game show with me and Tom. We'll stick with you on the other side of this break.
He already has more than 1,000 yards. The last 3 running backs to win the Heisman, Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, Reggie Bush, did not have more than 650 in their opening 5 games of the year. Ashton Gentry on pace to strike the pose in December.
Statistics matter. Blow every record out of the water, and he will be a Heisman. Disgraceful performance by the head coach, not Gene.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. Brady, I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
I do a sliding DiVincenzo to the one. Obviously, Terrence Shannon Jr., that is actually dynamic offensively and defensively. So we'll see how it works. I think it's a little bit of a work in progress. Do both teams win? Yes. I don't think at the end of the day, Minnesota could have afforded to keep Cat, Rudy, and Ant for that amount of money.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I do think they come back, and I think they win this game, but they've got to do it decisively. I think they've got to get that confidence back because they went out there, and like I said earlier, Kentucky almost beat Georgia. Kentucky almost did beat Ole Miss, and I think what you're going to see in this conference, if you don't play well and you're a top 10 team in the SEC, you're going to get knocked out by one of those top 25 teams in the SEC if you're not ready to play.
Powered by SportsGrid.
One more rally here at Pro Football Today. It's the post-game show with Kasey Hudson and Tom Vecchio on SportsGrid TV. Started off by bringing you coverage of the Thursday night football matchup of the Niners versus the Seahawks. Niners walk away 36-24. And now we're running through the Sunday slate. There's a game that is probably almost going to be equally as excited. I don't know. I could be being a little dramatic. It's very late, Tom. But we talked about the Commanders-Ravens being the game of the weekend, but Cardinals-Packers may not disappoint. We're walking into this game with a 5.5 spread at the moment, 47.5 on the total, plus money on the Cardinals of 198. How are you steering this one?
This should be a good game. You know, I did mention this when we did the Monday night game that I think this is a little bit of a letdown spot for the Cardinals coming off of a dramatic win against the 49ers, dramatic comeback win against the divisional opponent, going on the road, playing a Sunday 1 p.m. game, which is a 10 a.m. West Coast body clock game, as people like to say. I think it's a little bit of a letdown spot for the Cardinals. So mostly interested in a Kyler Murray interception prop, which I know is rather specific. But certainly looking to take some unders on some Cardinals players. Looking for the Packers, we want to know what's going on with their receiving core. Will Romeo Doubs be in there after suspension? They said that he's good. He's back with the team. They got to move on kind of thing. So I have some interest when it comes to the Packers. Nailing down 1 or 2 receivers is always tough just because they have so many options. So I don't mind the 5.5 of the Packers, but I actually I'm more interested just because I don't think the Cardinals are going to show up. I'm buying into it being a letdown spot.
Ooh, that's very interesting. Now, within that letdown, you and I are usually on the same page when it comes to James Conner and how he'll be able to produce. At the moment, I'm not seeing a receiving plus rush prop for him, or at least a total, to say the least. But right now, at the moment, his rushing yards are sitting at 71.5. Is this anything we would kind of steer towards because we know that he is an anchor on that offense to have any chance in being in this game?
Probably not, because if he's going over that mark, the Cardinals are probably scoring points, and that means the Packers probably aren't covering. So if I'm going to be in on the Packers, it means like I'm buying into one thing. It means kind of negates the other things that I can't be interested in for that game. And listen, that could change between now and Sunday. I don't have any bets in on this game, but I would certainly lean with the Packers as of now and just kind of avoid Connor props.
Okay. And the only reason I wanted to pick your brain on that one was just because Packers versus Vikings. Vikings, Aaron Jones, which I'm not calling Aaron Jones and James Conner the same player, but still Aaron Jones racking up 93 rushing yards. Sam Darnold picking up 15 of his own rushing yards there. So something probably better to gauge closer to the game. But as I mentioned, a game that could be very interesting or could be a letdown spot. As you paint the picture, Tom, we did start to touch on this one on Monday. I almost called Monday a completely different game. But again, we are rolling through here on Thursday night. Got to figure out what the landing spot is going to be because we've got the Detroit Lions versus the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys with I don't even know what to call Sunday's win. I'm not going to label it. Lions have to keep the momentum rolling to show that they are the team of the NFC. It was something. But Lions probably have to continue proving that they are the team of the NFC. So how should we get going on this game? Sunday, 4:25 p.m.
Yeah, this is going to be an awesome game. As I said, I think the Lions exact a little bit of revenge after that game at the end of last season when the offensive lineman didn't check in and then he get the touchdown, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm already in on the Lions. I'm already in on the Lions -3. That's where I like it. You know, if the line moves to -2.5, obviously that would be moving against me theoretically, but I would still love them at 2.5. The money line's obviously a little bit much. 52.5 is a high total. Certainly a high total. Do I want to play that? No. Do I think this game, if it starts off a little bit slow and it drops down to like 46, do I want to jump in there? Absolutely. When it comes to players, we know that Brandon Cooks was put on IR last week for the Cowboys. We saw Tolbert pick up a touchdown last week. Do I think that continues? Probably not. I think this has to be a big Amon-Ra St. Brown game for the Lions. And of course, underneath, looking to both Gibbs and Montgomery coming in the backfield for the Lions, I think they roll this game.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's going to be game specials combining Montgomery and Gibbs. We did see that a number of times in the weeks leading up to last week. So something to gauge as we get into this, or get closer to this game, I should say. CeeDee Lamb touchdown. If the Cowboys are able to find the end zone, that's probably your lock-in when it comes to looking at anything for an anytime touchdown. Outside of that, again, Lions continue to prove that they are the team of the NFC. There's not much more I would angle on this one. Or Dak. I mean, his passing yards and then his numbers, he's also one of those quarterbacks that just tends to find a way to continue to rack things up. Make sure you're following Tom Vecchio over on X, myself as well, the Sports Case, and then, of course, most importantly, at SportsGrid, so that you can always chat with us and keep up to date on the shows as we bring you full coverage of all sports across the board, but most importantly, NFL as the season continues to roll. That's a wrap for Tom and I tonight here on Pro Football Today, but you can join us on Sunday for the postgame show, Monday for the pregame party. We'll catch you guys next week.